America is often described as a nation of immigrants, but the phrase is almost too small for the reality it tries to capture. Immigration is not just part of America's story, it is America's story. Without immigration, there would be no United States as we know it. Every generation, every century, has been reshaped by new arrivals, the hopeful, the desperate, the dreamers, the workers, the innovators, and even those forced to cross oceans in chains. When we talk about immigration, we're not just talking about Ellis Island or the Statue of Liberty welcoming the tired and poor. We are also talking about African slaves who arrived against their will, about Chinese laborers who laid down railroad tracks in brutal heat, about Irish families escaping famine with nothing but hope in their pockets, about Jewish refugees who rebuilt their lives after the Holocaust, about Vietnamese boat people who found safety after war, and about the millions of undocumented immigrants who live and work in America today, even if their place in the nation's story is often denied. Immigration has been both celebrated and condemned, welcomed and resisted. Each wave of newcomers has faced suspicion, hostility, and laws designed to keep them out. And yet, every wave has left its mark, reshaping the culture, economy, and very identity of America. Think of the foods you eat, the music you hear, the clothes you wear, the technology you use. Bagels, pizza, tacos, sushi, jazz, hip-hop, yoga, salsa dancing, and Silicon Valley, all are gifts of immigration. Even the concept of the American dream, that anyone, no matter where they come from, can build a better life, is the immigrant dream writ large. This is the story of how immigration changed America. It is a story of triumph and tragedy, of hope and rejection, of struggle and resilience. It is also a reminder that the story is not finished. Every new generation of immigrants continues to redefine what it means to be American. Part 1: The Early Roots, Colonies and Forced Migration. The first major migrations to America were not driven by the dream of freedom, but by survival, and in many cases, by force. The Africans who came in chains. In 1619, the first enslaved Africans were brought to Virginia. Over the next 2 centuries, millions followed, torn from their families, shackled in the belly of ships, and sold into a system of brutal labor. Their journey was not immigration in the hopeful sense, but it shaped America more than any other. African slaves built plantations of tobacco, cotton, and sugar, the backbone of America's early economy. Their forced labor fueled the wealth of southern states and filled the coffers of northern merchants. Without slavery, America's economic rise would have been unthinkable. Yet enslaved Africans brought more than labor. They carried with them songs, rhythms, and traditions. They introduced new crops and cooking styles. Over generations, African traditions blended with European Christianity to create new religious expressions. The roots of gospel music, blues, jazz, and hip-hop can all be traced to this cultural fusion. Even in bondage, Africans transformed America. European settlers and the search for freedom. While Africans were forced to cross the Atlantic, Europeans came chasing dreams. Pilgrims and Puritans fled England in search of religious freedom, settling in Massachusetts. Germans arrived in Pennsylvania, bringing with them farming techniques, beer brewing, and a culture of education. Dutch settlers in New York, then New Amsterdam, left behind a legacy of tolerance and trade. These settlers were not always welcomed by one another. Colonial America was a patchwork of languages, faiths, and customs. Pennsylvania had German-speaking villages, New Orleans echoed with French, Spanish missions dotted the Southwest. Even then, America was multilingual and multicultural. The cost for Native peoples. But there was another side to this story. For Native Americans, immigration meant dispossession. As Europeans arrived in larger numbers, Native tribes were pushed off their lands, killed by wars and diseases, and confined to shrinking territories. Immigration for one group meant destruction for another. The early years of America reveal a pattern that would repeat again and again, newcomers arriving with dreams, clashing with those already here, and reshaping the land in the process. The Revolution and a nation of many. By the time of the American Revolution, the colonies were already diverse. Alongside English settlers lived Africans, Germans, Dutch, Irish, Scots, and French. Even then, America was not a single identity but a collection of many. When independence was declared in 1776, it was not just an English rebellion, it was the creation of a new kind of nation, one where people of many origins were bound together under a shared experiment. Part 2, the 19th century, the Great Waves. The 19th century transformed America through mass immigration. More than 30 million immigrants arrived between 1820 and 1920. Cities exploded, industries boomed, and the nation's character shifted forever. The Irish, fleeing famine. In the 1840s, a devastating potato famine drove millions of Irish people to flee starvation. They poured into cities like New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. They worked dangerous, low-wage jobs, digging canals, building railroads, and working as maids and laborers. Anti-Irish prejudice was widespread. Newspapers mocked them as drunks, criminals, and unfit for democracy. No Irish need apply signs hung outside workplaces. Yet Irish immigrants persevered. They built strong communities, leaned on Catholic parishes for support, and eventually rose into politics. By the late 1800s, Irish Americans dominated city governments and police departments, reshaping urban politics. The Germans, farmers, brewers, and teachers. Germans came in huge numbers, especially after failed revolutions in 1848. Many settled in the Midwest, bringing farming traditions that turned states like Wisconsin and Minnesota into agricultural powerhouses. Germans introduced kindergartens, Christmas trees, and a culture of music and education. Their breweries gave America its beer culture. Milwaukee, home of Pabst and Miller, was once called the German Athens. The Chinese, building the West. On the West Coast, Chinese immigrants arrived during the gold rush of the 1850s and later built the Transcontinental Railroad. They worked long hours in brutal conditions, often for less pay than white workers. Their contributions were immense, but their presence sparked resentment. Violence erupted in Chinatowns, and in 1882 the U.S. passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first federal law banning immigration based on nationality. This law set a precedent for future restrictions, but it also revealed how deeply immigration was entwined with race in America. Italians, Jews, and Eastern Europeans. By the late 19th century, Ellis Island became the symbol of immigration. Millions of Italians, Jews, Poles, and Russians arrived. Italians worked in construction, opened restaurants, and introduced food traditions like pasta and pizza that would become American staples. Jewish immigrants, many fleeing pogroms in Eastern Europe, worked in garment factories, founded labor unions, and enriched cultural life with Yiddish theater and literature. The impact. These waves reshaped cities. Tenements overflowed, labor strikes erupted, and cultural tensions flared. Yet immigrants fueled America's rise as an industrial giant. They worked in steel mills in Pittsburgh, meatpacking plants in Chicago, and textile factories in New England. The children of immigrants rose into professions, while their traditions reshaped America's identity. Part 3, the 20th century, restriction, refuge, and reinvention. Closing the doors. By the 1920s, anti-immigrant sentiment surged. The Immigration Act of 1924 imposed strict quotas, favoring Northern Europeans and shutting out Southern and Eastern Europeans, as well as Asians. Immigration slowed dramatically. America turned inward, especially during the Great Depression. Refugees and World War II. World War II changed everything. Jewish refugees sought escape from Nazi Germany, but many were turned away, a dark chapter in U.S. history. After the war, however, America accepted displaced persons, Holocaust survivors, war refugees, and later those fleeing communism in Eastern Europe. The Bracero Program. During the war, Mexican workers were recruited under the Bracero Program to fill labor shortages in agriculture. This program laid the foundation for large-scale Latino immigration, though workers often faced exploitation. The 1965 Immigration Act, a turning point. The most transformative law came in 1965. President Lyndon Johnson signed the Immigration and Nationality Act, ending quotas based on nationality. This opened the doors to Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. America was never the same again. The New America. After 1965, immigrants from India, China, Mexico, the Philippines, Korea, and Vietnam arrived in large numbers. Refugees from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos rebuilt their lives in America after wars devastated Southeast Asia. Indians and Chinese professionals fueled the rise of Silicon Valley. Latinos transformed the culture of California, Texas, and Florida. By the end of the 20th century, America was no longer dominated by European immigrants. It had become a global nation, with communities from every corner of the world. Part 4: Immigration and Identity in Modern America. By the 21st century, immigration was both a cultural engine and a political battlefield. Latinos, the growing majority. Latinos became the largest minority group, reshaping politics, culture, and language. Spanish became America's second language, spoken in homes, schools, and workplaces. Latino culture transformed music, reggaeton, salsa, bachata, sports, and cuisine. Asian America rising. Asian Americans became the fastest growing immigrant group. They excelled in medicine, technology, and academia. Immigrant entrepreneurs founded some of the most important companies in Silicon Valley. At the same time, Asian Americans fought against stereotypes and discrimination, proving that assimilation was never simple. Dreamers and the undocumented. Millions of undocumented immigrants lived and worked in America, often in silence. The Dreamers, young people brought as children, became the face of the movement for immigration reform. Their stories highlighted the contradictions of a nation built by immigrants yet hesitant to embrace new ones. Backlash and resilience. Events like 9/11 fueled suspicion of Muslim immigrants. Anti-immigrant rhetoric became louder in politics. Yet at the same time, immigrant communities mobilized, protested, and fought for recognition. They continued to build businesses, teach in schools, and serve in hospitals, often becoming the backbone of the nation. Part 5: How Immigration Changed America Forever. Immigration did not just change America, it made America. It built its cities, from the Irish in Boston to the Mexicans in Los Angeles. It created its foods, from pizza to tacos to bagels. It shaped its music, from jazz to hip-hop to Latin pop. It powered its industries, from the railroads to Silicon Valley. Every wave of immigrants, once rejected, eventually became part of the mainstream. The Irish were once despised. Today, St. Patrick's Day is a national celebration. Italians were once scorned. Today, Italian food is part of America's soul. Jews faced exclusion. Today, their contributions to science, art, and culture are immense. Latinos and Asians face challenges today, but history suggests their cultures too will one day be seen as part of the American fabric. Immigration also gave America its greatest strength: diversity. No other country in the world is home to so many different peoples, languages, and traditions. This diversity fuels creativity, innovation, and resilience. It makes America a global leader not despite its immigrants, but because of them. Immigration in America is not just a matter of history, or policy, or politics. It is the very essence of what the nation is, a living, breathing experiment built by people who came from somewhere else. To understand how immigration changed America, we must recognize that it did not merely add a few new dishes to the table or a few new festivals to the calendar. It rewrote the nation's DNA. From the very beginning, America has been a land defined by arrivals and departures. Africans were brought in chains, their labor stolen but their culture indelibly stamped on the nation's soul. Europeans arrived in waves: English pilgrims, Irish farmers, German craftsmen, Italian laborers, Jewish refugees. Asians crossed oceans to build railroads, start businesses, and later fuel the technology revolution. Latinos migrated across borders, filling the fields, restaurants, and cities with language, music, and energy. Each wave faced resistance, suspicion, and rejection, yet each left behind contributions that reshaped the very meaning of America. The irony is that America has always struggled to reconcile its ideals with its realities. It proudly calls itself a nation of immigrants, yet every generation has tried to draw lines about who belongs and who does not. The Irish were called drunks. The Italians were called criminals. The Chinese were banned outright. Jews were turned away during the Holocaust. Mexicans were welcomed as workers but denied full acceptance. Muslims and Middle Easterners became targets of suspicion after 9/11. And yet, time after time, those who were rejected eventually became part of the American mainstream. Yesterday's outsider became today's insider. This pattern reveals something profound. Immigration is not a threat to America's identity, it is America's identity. The so-called American dream is not just a slogan. It is the immigrant's dream, the belief that life can be better, that children can rise higher, that hard work can transform destiny. Without immigration, there would be no American dream, because the dream itself is born of the immigrant's journey. Think about the daily life of the United States. The foods on your plate, pizza, tacos, sushi, curry, are gifts of immigrants. The music that moves you, jazz, hip-hop, salsa, reggae, K-pop, comes from immigrant cultures mixing and fusing. The cities that define America, New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, are tapestries of immigrant neighborhoods, from Chinatown to Little Havana to Koreatown. Even America's innovations, from Silicon Valley's tech giants to the medical breakthroughs in its hospitals, are driven by immigrants and their children. Immigration has not only changed America's culture, it has fueled its economy and secured its place as a global power. But immigration has also done something deeper. It has made America uniquely pluralistic. Unlike countries built on one ethnic group or one language, America has always been a mosaic. That mosaic has not been easy to maintain. It has come with tensions, clashes, and discrimination. Yet it has also created resilience. America can adapt, absorb, and reinvent itself precisely because it is not bound to one identity. Diversity is not its weakness, it is its strength. And yet, the story is unfinished. Immigration remains one of the most polarizing issues in modern American politics. Debates rage over undocumented immigrants, over refugees, over border walls and visas. The questions asked today: who belongs? Who deserves entry? What does it mean to be American? Are the same questions asked 100 years ago, and 200 years ago. Every generation struggles with them anew. But history offers a lesson: the answer has always expanded, never contracted. The Irish who were rejected became mayors and police chiefs. The Italians who were scorned gave America its beloved foods and traditions. The Jews who were excluded became leaders in science, business, and the arts. The Asians once banned now lead in education and technology. The Latinos and Muslims who face hostility today will one day be seen as essential threads in the American fabric. Immigration changed America not by erasing its contradictions, but by teaching it to live with them. It forced the nation to wrestle with its ideals: liberty, equality, and opportunity. It revealed the gap between the promise and the practice, but it also pushed the nation to close that gap, little by little. Each new wave of immigrants has expanded the meaning of we the people. Each has demanded recognition, fought for rights, and claimed space in the national story. What does this mean for the future? It means that America will continue to change. Demographics will shift. Cultures will blend. Languages will mix. New challenges will arise, but so will new strengths. Immigration ensures that America is never static, never fixed, never finished. It is a nation always in motion, always reinventing itself. To ask how immigration changed America is to ask how rivers shape valleys, or how fire forges steel. Immigration has carved out the contours of America's culture, burned away its certainties, and forged new identities. It has not always been peaceful. It has often been painful. But it has always been transformative. Today, when you walk through New York City and hear a dozen languages in a single block, when you eat Mexican tacos for lunch and Indian curry for dinner, when you see a Latina judge on the Supreme Court and an African American president in the White House, when you log into a computer invented by the son of a Russian immigrant or use Google founded by the child of a Soviet refugee, you are living the legacy of immigration. The story of immigration is the story of struggle and success, of exclusion and inclusion, of heartbreak and hope. It is the story of how America became more than a place, it became an idea. An idea that no matter where you are from, no matter what you look like, no matter what language you speak, you can belong, you can contribute, you can dream. And that story is not over. Every day, new arrivals step onto American soil. They bring with them memories of another place, but hopes for a new future. They will face obstacles, just as every immigrant before them did. They will be told they don't belong, just as others were told. But in time, they too will change America, and America will change them. Immigration is not America's problem. It is its promise. It is not America's weakness. It is its strength. It is not America's past. It is its present and future. To conclude, immigration did not just change America. Immigration made America. And as long as there are new stories of arrival, of struggle, and of triumph, the American story will never truly be complete.